My name is Carole Bentley, and I'm a science teacher in Floyd County at Allen Central Elementary. And one of the grants that I wrote this year was for Spheros. And I was wanting students to be able to see how coding could be used in their life. And the reason that I decided this was because I look around and see that a lot of our jobs in the coal fields, they're gone. They're not here any longer for us to depend on. And I also thought about back to the 50s and 60s when people had to leave here when the mine shut down at that time, and they had to go north in order to find jobs. And for that reason, that is why I included the song from Dwight Yoakam, Reading, Writing, and Arithmetic. And it talks about how people had to leave this area and head north to go find jobs in factories. I don't want that to happen again in our area, and even though it started to happen, I'm hoping there's something that can be done and will be done that will actually help to provide jobs for our kids here so that they can stay here in our area. It's going to be very important to keep people here, for our tax bases, to keep people here to hopefully bring industry in rather than them going out. So my grant was about coding, and I used the money from the grant to purchase Spheros, which are devices that can be used to maneuver around using coding. And my kids used the block coding. And what they did is I'd written a unit and focused around Mars. What they had to do was they had to design a rover, and they used Connects kits in order to do this. And these kits were actually a grant that I had received and purchased these Connects kits a few years ago. So we used the Connects kits. They had to work in groups of twos, and they had to design a rover that would be able to make it from one end of the hall, which was the base camp, to the other end of the hall, which was the polar ice cap. Once at the polar ice cap, they had to retrieve ice to bring it back to the polar ice cap. To the base camp. And so students had to be able to design something that would carry ice, which was actually paper that had been balled up, but their rover had to carry that ice back to the base camp. In order to do that, I really didn't know what I was going to use for the surface or the terrain of the Martian planet. So I kind of got to looking around and just used a lot of different objects that I had in the room. And they had to code these Spheros to actually be able to maneuver around all the objects from one end of the hallway to the other end and bring that ice back. In doing this, I wanted to relate it to, our space program, which, Mars is our next focus. And to also bring about that coding to them so it would make it relevant and important. The data that I collected was important because in the beginning I saw that kids actually didn't know a lot, didn't think they liked a lot about coding. It didn't change a whole lot because there's a lot of kids that don't like to deal with the computers. They're more outside, more hands-on kind of kids, and that's very obvious once you start to work with kids in the computers. But overall, I did have some kids that said they really enjoyed it and are thinking maybe that may be a way that they go with their education later on and maybe a job.